Hello, everyone. A big and warm welcome to this very special event brought to you by the Center for Women's Leadership at the Forbes School of Business and Technology. Today, we are celebrating International Women's Day. So happy International Women's Day to each and every one of you. We appreciate you joining us for our events this week as we embrace equity, promote solidarity, and celebrate incredible feats of resilience. Today, we are presenting a global panel discussion focusing on crisis management, and we are bringing you an amazing group of ladies from around the globe. We're going to start with a super brief introduction for each panelist as well as our moderator, and then we are going to dive right into our discussion for today. So let's meet our panelists. First up, we have Dr. Elizabeth Kassab. She is an experienced trainer and human resource specialist. Elizabeth has held both administrative and academic positions at several Lebanese universities and is currently a professor in Lebanon. She was born in Canada and she is Lebanese Canadian. Next up, we have Dr. Avisha Sadajinajad. She is lead faculty and associate professor at the Forbes School of Business and Technology in our marketing program, and she is Iranian American. Next, Tatiana Lapina. She is originally from Ukraine, but unfortunately had to flee her home country due to the Russian invasion. She currently resides in Florida and works teaching English as a second language. Next, Camilita Nuttall. She is a multimillionaire property investor, wealth, and business coach. She is originally from Trinidad and Tobago and currently resides in London, England. Last but certainly not least, we have Lumbie Mlambo. She is a CEO, United Nations Global Leadership Award recipient, and dedicated clean water advocate. She's a native of Zimbabwe and currently resides in Texas. Moderating this exceptional panel of ladies, we have Dr. Maja Zelihic. She serves as the Dean of the Forbes School of Business and Technology, and she is one of the founders of the Center for Women's Leadership. Dr. Zelihic is a Bosnian American. Ladies, thank you so much for joining us today, and it is my honor and privilege to hand the floor over to our moderator, Dr. Zelihic.
Thank you so much, Brandy. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We are, as you can tell, wearing purple, which signifies justice and dignity. Happy Women's Day to all ladies in the audience. Now, just to give you a little bit of the background, the concept of International Women's Day first emerged in the early 1900s. In 1909, 15,000 women marched through the streets of New York City demanding shorter hours, better pay, and voting rights. This International Women's Day has been celebrated since 1977 in 197 countries, March 8th every year. The theme for this year's Women's Day, according to the United Nations, is Digital, Innovation and Technology for Gender Equality. And it also aims to emphasize the importance of technology and developing technology in bridging gender issues to light. I am actually joined here by such an international panel of wonderful women leaders that are coming from different parts of the world. And every single one of these different parts of the world is facing certain challenges. And we're going to focus today on just a few areas, but keep in mind, this world is an incredibly big place. And there are many other crisis areas and many other areas where there's lots of opportunities to empower women and promote the concepts of equality and dignity. We will start first with Ukraine. The Ukraine conflict, the vast majority of us are aware of what started happening in 2022. The origins of the recent conflict started in 2014 when Russian military seized control of the Crimea, a province within the state of Ukraine. Tatiana was with us earlier in 2022 as she escaped Ukraine, and she at that point of time was a refugee in Mexico. Afterwards, she settled in South Florida. And to say at least, Tatiana, this was quite a troublesome journey for you in the last year. How are your family members and friends in Ukraine right now?
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity to be here and to speak about Ukraine. Well, it definitely has been a journey. Actually, today marks exactly 1 year that I traveled away from Ukraine, and I haven't been able to come back. I just locked the door of my apartment and left. The majority of my friends left Ukraine as well. They had to flee the country, same as my immediate family. But of course, I still have aunts and uncles and other friends who stayed there. Unfortunately, it becomes like people get used to this situation so much, it becomes normal part of their lives. Like I see videos on Instagram and Facebook where my friends are cooking something in the kitchen. They hear the alert, but they just ignore it because like how many times a day can you go to the basement? Probably after a month you get tired. So it's really heartbreaking what's happening. And the more you try to live your normal life, rebuild your life, distance yourself from the events, then you go back to reading the news or watching the news, and it's just really heartbreaking.
Thank you, Tatiana. The issue with many conflict areas in the world is sometimes a lot of countries are getting the primetime coverage for a very brief period of time. And then afterwards, we are focusing on yet another crisis. And that does not mean that people in the crisis area are forgotten per se, but they're not getting the attention they deserve. And today we're not talking only about women and girls of Ukraine, we're talking about people of Ukraine in general. And we are definitely hoping that some of the international efforts will result in the peace agreement being reached. Going to another area of Iran, we are painfully aware of the civil unrest and protest against the government associated, and it was triggered by the death in police custody of Mahsa Amini that has started in September of 2022, and the protests are still ongoing. Now, Amini has been arrested by the Guidance Patrol for violating the mandatory hijab law, wearing her hijab improperly. Now, what is the difference between this latest protest in reference to many others that were happening in Iran over the span of the last few decades? This protest now involved urban middle class and rural working areas for the first time. And this is now the place and time where the Iranians were gathering and getting an international support. I talked to Avisha, our full-time professor, marketing department, just the other day, and I was asking her about the latest development, because yet again, unless you are Googling what's happening in Iran right now, it is yet again not on the forefront of the news. And she was telling me about the troubling practices of schoolgirls being poisoned in order from being prevented from now going to school. So Avisha, what's happening in Iran right now as we stand here today? And what are you seeing as the further development within this movement?
Thank you, Maja. Just in order to explain what's happening now, I just want to go back to 6 months ago, as you said, that it all started with the death of Mahsa Amini. You may know that girls and women in Iran have been a target of the most restricted rules and regulations. And one of them was compulsory hijab, which the day one of this revolution, the previous revolution in 44 years ago, the first law was that women, no matter from what religion, no matter from what what belief you are, you have to wear compulsory hijab when you are in the public in society. And as Tatiana beautifully said, women started to object to that. But for how long you can object when you are when you don't have the power? So people started to accept it and put up with it for 44 years. But after the death of Mahsa Amini, which was so ridiculous, didn't make sense at all, people said enough is enough. Girls and women were the first who took this to the streets. They started to cutting their hair. They started to, put the scarves in the fire, and they said, we don't have problem if you believe in hijab and you want to wear your hijab, but we are not going to put up with compulsory hijab anymore. And from then, many girls started to show up in society without hijab. So they didn't wear any scarf. They go to schools, they go to universities, they go to the market. And that the government, instead of addressing this protest, this objection, they started to kill more people. They started to kill more girls and more women. They started to kill kids between age of 15 to 16. So many kids were killed in their cars. They were just passing by and they were shot by military forces of the regime. And so many protesters were blind because they would shot in their eyes, on purpose to scare them, to have them go back to wearing hijab and go back, to the life that they were living for 44 years. But that didn't scare girls or women or their families, the men who were supporting girls and women. And then after a while, about 3 months ago, we started to hear that here and there, we see that a bunch of girls got poisoned while they were at school, middle school girls, elementary school girls. And the result of that poisoning was that they would smell some sort of gas which had the odor, the fruity odor. And then they started to feel severe shortness of breath, nausea, vomiting, dizziness. Some schoolgirls, they passed out, and some of them were paralyzed. They had to rush everyone to the hospital. And at the beginning, the government started to blame the girls and their families, that you are lying, you're exaggerating, this is nothing, this is, public hysteria over nothing. And then the numbers went up, and more schools became affected. And right now, over 1,200 schoolgirls have been poisoned in 60 cities. And some of which are in hospitals still, they have in critical situations. We still don't know what are the magnitude of the effect of this gas on the body. And the government is still lying. They said, okay, they changed the narrative once, it really got big, it really got out of their hand. And they said, okay, some arbitrary, unofficial force is doing that. But nobody is believing that in a policed country like Iran, that in every corner of the country, there are forces to police people. These things cannot go under their radar. So people are not believing that. It didn't scare them. Right now, lots of mothers keep their girls and their boys from school because they don't want to hurt them. But we have seen so many mothers go to the schools, even those schools that have not been attacked yet. They went to the schools and they formed a human chain in front of the schools just to object that we don't put up with your tricks anymore. This is what the government has been doing to schoolgirls, to all the girls and women in Iran, very similar to what Taliban and ISIS did to Afghan girls and what Boko Haram did to Nigerian girls. So girls have been always the target of such terror. We don't say it poisoning, because this is the underscoring of the situation. It is truly a chemical and biological terrorism against women. And these authorities are afraid of women the most. Yeah.
Well, and this is the thing, since we're going to touch upon several different areas, there are certain themes that are emerging. If you suppress women's education, you suppress their independence, their ability to earn money, and their ability to fight for their rights within the society. And as I mentioned previously, as just because a particular story is no longer on the front cover of the news, that doesn't mean the story is going away. The people within that particular region are still facing all the obstacles that we talked about. We are going to yet another region. We are going to some of the work that our lovely Lumbie is working on. I actually would like to share just briefly some statistics. According to the United Nations, 2.2 billion people worldwide lack access to safe drinking water. 4.2 billion people lack access to safety managed sanitation services. Millions upon millions of girls and women are lacking basic access to hygiene products. Millions and millions of women are unable to have access to safe medical facilities. And a lot of those issues are connected to having sanitary facilities and having clean water. Lumbie, you've spent your entire life. You are UN award recipient for your leadership in addressing the water shortages, water pollution in the developing world. Can you share some of your recent struggles? Because I know we hosted you a couple of years ago and you were telling us about some engagement your company was on. If you can share a few recent projects that you were working on. And you're on mute. Yes.
Yeah. So, right. So first of all, I just want to say thank you for having me here again. It's a pleasure. And I don't take this platform lightly because I know a lot of people are listening. There's a lot of people here. But the issue with lack of access to clean water, sanitation, and hygiene is huge and a major, major, major thing. I don't even know how we're going to resolve it. We're just going to have to be creative. And I do realize that it's not just in Zimbabwe, it's everywhere in the world. Just come to think about it, that a lot of people, women and girls especially, because they are tasked with the collection of water, they, wherever I go, whichever country I talk to, I find that, the stories are similar. Women are the ones at the front lines and girls at the front lines. So for that reason, because women, especially in Zimbabwe, have been known to walk up to 18 miles a day, meaning 10 hours a day, they're out there looking for water. So at my projects, especially in Matobo Hills in Zimbabwe, you find that women really struggle and with the finding water because it becomes very dangerous when they go out there. The environment is dangerous. The fact that Matobo Hills is, just as the name suggests, is full of hills, makes it very dangerous, and women are prone to falling and breaking their hips and so forth. Not only that, but also girls are known to be sexually assaulted as they look for water, which is really, really, it's very painful to imagine. So it's like the hardest thing that I've noticed, there's nothing as painful as promising people that you're going to be there to give them water. And then when you get there, you find that, you cannot give them water because you cannot find water. And they're all sitting around the whole day, praying and jumping up and down and dancing because to them, they know that there's going to be water. And then at the end of the day, you tell them, I could not find water. That is the most painful thing to live with. And some of my projects that I went to at Matobo Hills, I realized that, as we were trying to provide a water system, that the women there that were sitting and waiting had not eaten anything the whole day. We got there at 12 noon and they told me they didn't have breakfast. They were not going to eat anything that day because they ate yesterday. And then when I just didn't understand. And they said they would drink water once we finish, providing the system, they would drink water. I found that to be really amazing. And I was determined and I just stood there praying that we'll find water. And guess what? We did not find water. That was the most painful thing because when we stood up and said, let's take pictures, I realized that those women were pregnant. And in fact, that most of them were pregnant and they had not eaten anything since yesterday. That's when I said, okay, enough is enough. Let's go to the nearest store. I was going there with my, it was a donor trip. I went with a donor, Anita Hawkins, and she went to the store with me and bought food for the women, vegetables and everything, said, you gotta cook because, you have to eat because you're pregnant. You have to drink something because, you're thirsty. You need to keep yourself hydrated. So it's very painful to watch. And that story in Matobo Hills is not the only one. Wherever I go, the story is similar. Women giving birth on their way to one of the clinics, in the bushes, in the forest, in the terrain, giving birth and walking on barefooted, to get to the clinic. That is the only one in that region that has water. Giving birth and not making it to the clinic because you just could not make it to the clinic. You gave birth on the way and not having water. But still having that resilience, insisting that you want to get to this clinic because there's hope for water. That right there breaks my heart. So there's got to be a way to find water. There's got to be a better way to find water. And so I've actually started something else called 100 Voices for Our Planet. That teaches people how to live consciously, eco-friendly, because how we live and how we manage the environment will lead us to finding that water. Because sometimes we human beings, we deplete the resources, we deplete the water without, I'm just not being conscious. Just unintentionally, we deplete these resources. So we need to be able to be aware of our environment, to say what I do impacts the environment, what I do impacts the water and everything else, so that there can be water everywhere. So those are my stories, some of my stories that are very, very painful, but I've lived through them and I continue to live through them.
This is one of those moments, Lumbie, when I say to myself, I wish I don't know what you're talking about. Sadly, I do. My city, Sarajevo in Bosnia, during the Bosnian War, experienced 4 years. It was the longest siege of a city in Europe since World War II, since Leningrad, and experienced 4 years without a running water, with only certain areas within the city that you're able to get the water from. And you have to pick and choose whether to risk your life and lives of your loved ones going to collect some water, or die from lack of access to water. So water is, at the end of the day, there's so many crucial things in the world, but if we don't have water, we don't have life. So thank you so much again for all the good work you're doing in that particular area. Every single one of those stories, we can spend the entire panel on just that one story, but we're trying to capture everything that is happening to women across the world to the extent possible with the help of our panelists. So now I'll take you to Trinidad and Tobago. Trinidad and Tobago has a lot of wonderful legal frameworks that are geared towards promoting, enforcing, and monitoring gender equality, with a focus on prevention of violence against women. In 2011, 58.2% of women of the reproductive age of 15 to 49 years provided a very promising statistics that they are able to access medical care, and they were satisfied with the methods that they were given, modern methods for taking care of themselves and their loved ones. So that's a positive statistics. Now, going back to something that was not as positive, approximately almost 10% of women the same age reported they've been subject to physical and or sexual violence by their current or former intimate partner in the last 12 months. And when it comes to that, the approximately 11.2% of women that were age of 20 to 24 were married or in union before the age of 18. So you have a population of women that are under the pressure of physical and sexual abuse, and many of those women are minors. So I'll go to you, Camilita. You grew up in the Caribbean, you grew up in Trinidad and Tobago. Give us some of the issues that women and girls are facing currently in your home country.
Oh gosh, where do I start? First, I want to say thank you, Dr. Maja, for having me. And I've got a rose for every single woman today for International Women's Day, from me to you. I've got a few here. You can come and have one. Yeah, this is so important, I tell you, because I grew up, as you know, my story, grew up really poor, struggled through school. And that's the one thing in which, from my generation, my group of people saw that women in particular I don't know if we didn't have opportunities like men, but we had to work harder to achieve a lot more, a lot quicker. Somehow we had to strive more and push more, and there were opportunities available for some men a lot more than for women. But for me in particular, it wasn't the case. At the age of 13, I had to go on the public dump, digging through rubbish, just to get glass bottles to sell to attend secondary school. My mother was, adamant we were going to go to school. And I fought hard in order to do that. But again, a lot of women either didn't have support or they felt they didn't have opportunities available to them at all. So they ended up in relationships with men, with older men, with other men, and they stayed in those relationships because that was sort of getting away from poverty in the home. They got into relationships that wasn't always the best. And that has continued. It has gotten better over the years because the country has been focused more on education for women. And you and I know that education is a powerful tool teaching women about how to come out of poverty and how to look after themselves. But the reality is there are a lot more that needs to be done for women within that particular group of people. And it usually happens within the poorer range of people, not the middle class, or upper middle class or high class. It is usually around the poor women, which I know, because I myself found myself in that situation, having relationships at a younger age because I wanted to get away from poverty. I wanted to get away from the norm. Didn't find myself in an abusive relationship, but I saw so many people who did. A friend of mine, actually, her dad just married her off at 16, 17, because he couldn't afford to keep the family. And I was determined. I said to her, I'm going to do what I can to help you so that you too can go to school. If I'm going to go to school, you're going to go to school too. Because I knew that education was a powerful way forward. The government has changed a lot, and they have done a lot for women and a lot for girls and a lot for the younger people today, which I'm so grateful for. All the governments, I'm not sort of, claiming one. All the governments have done a lot, but there still needs a lot. There's still a lot more work that needs to be done as far as women are concerned. And my heart and my goal is to go back. I started a community group teaching children in that sort of locality what to look for other than the norm. Education. I was always pushing, there is an alternative. You have an alternative. The alternative is get some either book education or financial education, which is what I now teach. Because at least if you have that, you have a better chance of moving forward when you get older. So I started this community group for young people. I would help them, take them out of this area and show them the reality of what life can be, even though I was poor myself. And a lot of them went on and do amazing things. And my heart and my passion, and Lumbie, I'm looking forward to connecting you with someone that I know and to hearing more about your project, because I know if we as women, if it starts with us, if we have the opportunity, and all we need, guys, is one person that believes in us enough to help us and to guide and encourage. And a lot of those young people, that's all they need. Like me, I was one of those young people. I was one of those that begged for money to come to London just to go to law school. I was one of those who knew and understood what women were facing every single day. And so my heart and my passion is to do something huge for humanity, but for young people who are my age, people who think they don't have any opportunities, people who think they don't have a choice. You have a choice. If you're a young woman that's listening, you have a choice. If you know a young woman that needs help, she has a choice. Tell her, Camilita went from the public dump in Trinidad to being a multi-millionaire property investor in the UK. If Camilita can do it, you could do it too. Education, get around people that will know, like, and trust you. Focus and follow your passion, your dream. And if you make a mistake, you get into some situation, you can always come out. Seek help, seek advice, but go after who you're called to become, regardless of where you are right now. And I know you can do it because I have done it.
Thank you so much, Camilita. I just want to address two quick things. And Camilita knows the story because I shared it with her, because I know her passion when it comes to the world of education. I was doing some consulting work in Zambia, working for the e-learning technology company, and we were implementing e-learning processes and systems in the Southern African region. And honestly, as I went to Zambia, I did not realize that experience will change my life. 6 months later, we implemented everything at the University of Zambia. It was a very rewarding work. I don't think I was very naive. I didn't realize the impact. I'm doing this lecture 6 months later, and I have a young lady coming to me, thanking me profoundly for changing her life. I was trying to be respectful and apologetic, and I said to her, I'm very sorry. I'm not sure we've never met, because I realized that, I'm not necessarily certain how change. her life. And she said that she was supposed to go into an arranged marriage situation, similar to Camilita, what you're saying about your friend. And she said that she had no choice to go to school because residing in Lusaka, the capital of Zambia, was a non-option. Walking to school for many hours was a non-option. One of the reasons, Lumbie, was the water shortage, and she would not be able to actually provide for her family because she was carrying water to their homes every single day, and they cannot afford for the water carrier, for lack of better words, to all of a sudden live in Lusaka and go to school. She said when we did e-learning implementation, she was able, with the help of internet in her local village, start her studies at the University of Zambia and avoid arranged marriage. So she felt that which it wasn't me, of course, it was the whole process, changed her life. Every single one of you can make that difference. I would like now to go to Elizabeth. And Elizabeth, thank you so much for your patience. We have so many fascinating stories. You are Canadian, but you're also Lebanese, and you're currently in Lebanon.
I am.
We are all painfully aware of what's happening in Lebanon in the last few decades with the war and everything that was happening with several different fractions in that country. Right now, the human rights situation in Lebanon further deteriorated in 2021. More than 80% of the country's residents do not have access to the basic rights, including health, education, and adequate standard of living, such as housing and electricity. And that was caused by the loss of infrastructure during the war. And also, when it comes to the economy of Lebanon, the Lebanese pound lost 90% of its value since October of 2019. If that was not enough for a country, everyone was aware what had happened in August of 2020, a large, horrific explosion in the port of Beirut, the capital of Lebanon, causing further devastation. How are people of Lebanon doing right now? And especially, how are women and girls doing in Lebanon right now?
First of all, I want to thank you all. I am really honored to be with such amazing women. And I know that everyone that's listening to us, I hope that what we can share with you sort of inspires you a little bit. Dr. Maja, what can I share with you? It's a very sad story. As you said, we have a lack of education. The public sector, the students are not learning. We have young women from very young ages they've been on protests and strikes. They have not been getting paid. Students are not in schools. We have people arriving to emergency needing healthcare, but because they cannot pay up front and there is no healthcare system, they are dying on the in emergency before even being accepted. If they do not have money, they will not accept them into the hospitals. We have people dying in front of hospitals. We have women giving birth on the road. They are not allowed access to hospitals because they cannot pay. We have a lack of electricity. We have generators, and we have the governmental, which does not come on. So when people want to run, if we want to wash the clothes, we're waking up after midnight to get an hour of access of governmental electricity to be able to wash our clothes. That's if we have water. Again, the access to water is an issue. People have to purchase water. We don't even know where this water is coming from, if it's filtered, if it's not filtered, but we have a lot of issues when it comes to this, the access to education, the access to healthcare. And as you know as well, only 2 nights ago, there was an RPG-7 that went off a couple of sort of towns. There was few issues security-wise. You don't get to hear the day in and days out of the issues that happen when people pull out their guns as you're driving out. You're trying to go to work. You think it's a normal day. They close the streets. They're burning tires. It creates panic. And as someone who teaches at a university, and you're looking at these young women and these young men and trying to sort of say to them that there is a future there, is very difficult, because you want to keep them understanding that the world is out there for you and stick. So they actually say to me, we have 3 exchange rates. What country, Dr. Elizabeth, has 3? We work on the black market. What country works with corrupted black market money? We have a banking rates. We have the normal rate that we don't even know about. So people are not getting paid. The cost of food is very expensive. As you know, it's 90%. We've got super hyperinflation. I don't even know if there's a word for it. So people are not eating what they should be. So we've gotten to a point where it's people are not even just depressed. We have people, unfortunately, the suicide rate is up. We've had domestic violence is up. Only a week ago, it went live onto the news. A woman was killed his wife on the streets. And unfortunately, it went viral. The people on the streets ran after him, but he had already killed her on the street. And unfortunately, okay, he's gone into custody, but we've lost that woman. So there's no control. We don't have any security. And it's hard, and especially being a female in a patriarchal society, as you know, with religious and 18 religious factions, you have various things that you're dealing with at any given level. So it hasn't been easy to say. With the Beirut bomb, my son was driving when it was a 2-minute interval. We lost over 200 people, young children. We have parents, and they're still trying to work out why. They're just trying to work out, we need our rights. And as you walk around sort of the streets, and as you know, we've come out of a war. We haven't come out of it, ladies. That war has not stopped for us and at any given time. And even as women, trying to tell people, I even have young ladies say to me, why should I continue my education? Because even if I get to a certain position, I'm getting paid less. I can't get a job. I need to know somebody. They want to marry me off. And it pulls all your strength to kind of sit there and say, we can do this and we can do this together. There's so much more to say. I don't want to take up so much time, but it is very difficult, and it's only getting worse. That's the problem. And I don't know if we have a solution to it.
And thank you, Dr. Elizabeth. And we're, of course, so sorry hearing all this. And like I said, I think one of the themes, one of the lessons we can learn is that we are not alone. Mm-hmm. I remember feeling incredibly alone in Bosnia. I remember feeling completely forgotten. And I remember feeling that no one cares. And the problem is sometimes we are so focused on our day-to-day lives, and we're so focused on the issues that we have at hand. Where's the next meal coming from? Am I going to be able to obtain the basic necessities for life? And I'm looking at the attendees, and I'm seeing a lot of our students. Our students are adult learners. Our students are juggling sometimes even several jobs or raising families. We have a lot of military students. Some of them are still active military. The others went through certain war zone situations, and some of them are suffering from PTSD and other related symptoms. We have single mothers raising kids while going to school. And a lot of times that profound feeling of, nobody cares. I am alone and no one else is facing this. So as we go through different crisis areas, and those are incredibly global crises, one of the things that I'm hearing is, just because we are not on the very forefront of your minds, or we are not the headline, we are not the top news tonight, that doesn't mean that it's stopped. Because going back to a lot of things, for example, I'm just going to focus on Lebanon for a split second. The latest time that we broader audience was talking about Lebanon was the explosion in Beirut. Ukraine is a little bit more on the forefront, because not necessarily because of our love for the people of Ukraine. It's because that one of the world powers is involved, in this particular case, Russia. That doesn't mean that we humans, we regular citizens, our heart is not going out to Ukraine, but because of the element of Russia being involved, they're a little bit more on a forefront. We are collaborating here, Forbes School of Business, with the University of the Economy in Kiev. And we actually did some lectures with them, and we're going to have a little bit of a student exchange program where students are actually going to join their communication class. Tatiana, not focusing on the entire human tragedy of Ukraine, which is so hard to do, just focusing maybe on what's happening with women and girls in Ukraine right now. Can you share with us what can we do as the world community to help?
It's very difficult to say what can be done because me personally, I don't believe that anyone who is in Ukraine right now is safe, especially closer to the borders, closer to the problematic regions. We all saw the stories about Bucha. This happened last year in spring when the Russian army just withdrew from there, and they saw so many women who were raped and killed. And unfortunately, yes, this is the reality of every war, I guess. But I mean, we're talking about lives. We're talking about women who will lose, as other speakers say. And what can we do? I mean, I donate regularly. That's all I can do. And I every day wake up with a feeling that I don't do enough. We spoke about this when you had me here last time, that I was having a deep conflict inside me for leaving the country just because I was scared for my life. But at the same time, I felt very guilty because of all the people who actually stayed. And I thought maybe I have to be there. At the same time, you have to think what you can do for yourself, how you can save yourself. I think the world is doing a lot for Ukraine. I'm very, very grateful for USA, for Poland, for many other countries who accept our refugees, who give opportunities to study. I am going to study very soon here in America, and I'm very happy about it. So I think the world has been incredibly supportive. I think we have to continue doing it, not only to Ukraine. I was just telling my boyfriend this morning that the world is talking about Ukraine a lot, basically because Russia has nuclear weapons, and this is a big story. But nobody talks so much anymore about Iran. Nobody talks about Lebanon. Unfortunately, I wish we all talked about this more and did more for women in these countries and for all the people in these countries. So back to your question, what we can do, I guess, donate and just help as much as we can with our own possibilities. Because if you can, Maja, I know you were having elections there. This is amazing. If we can speak about Ukraine, if we can donate a little bit of money, repost something, just do whatever we can.
Thank you so much, Tatiana. And you mentioned human rights violation, and we're discussing difficult topics here. If we discuss violence against women, we cannot avoid discussing rape. Unfortunately, men are using rape as a weapon of destruction when it comes to women. 20 to 50,000 women were raped during the Bosnian War. I am hearing reports, and of course the stats are still being gathered, about the Ukraine women being raped as the conflict progresses in the areas that were captured. The violence against women, going back to what Dr. Elizabeth was saying, poverty, violence, desperation, a lot of times is also connected to physical violence against women. And going back to what Camilita was touching upon, and we were sharing some statistics pertaining to Trinidad and Tobago, out of desperation, sometimes even domestic partners resort to violence. So those are the type of things that are difficult to talk about. Total different area that Lumbie is trying to make a difference when it comes to water access. I watched a few incredible documentaries on Netflix pertaining to the access of hygiene products for women and what women are going through in order to get creative. I do feel that there are so many blessings that we have in the Western world when it comes to going to the stores and buying the hygiene products that we need. However, I'm in favor of those products not being taxed, because we women do not have choice. as far as buying those products. But you know what? That is a beautiful struggle to have and beautiful battle to have in comparison not having them at all, not having access to those products at all. Now, what I would like to do, I would like to pause because the chat pod is having so many beautiful questions, and I would like for our panelists to be able to address some of those questions. So I'll turn it over to you, Brandy.
Thank you, Maja. Yes, we've seen just tons of messages of support and love in the chat, and I've received a couple of questions via private message. So we'll take a look at those. The first question that came in is regarding women's positions in some of these societies. What have our panelists seen being done to help promote women and get them the qualifications and experiences that are necessary to move into higher positions in society?
And anyone can answer. We're not going to do a particular order. Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay. I want to say inclusion. Because without including women in anything, then we'll never make it. Because if you look like at 2 years ago, we're talking about including women, elevating women to get out of, to close the gender equality gap. But look at where we are. The report that came out said we're nowhere near where we wanted to be. So we must be doing something wrong. I think if we really put the women at the center of the rebuilding efforts and really include women in everything that we're planning, I think we'll make progress. That means including women for funding as well. Fund women, because I think the problem now is that since we said women need to be elevated, everybody's taking that as women need to be trained. Women need to be mentored. But now we're not getting out of that. Can we move from training and mentorship to actually putting women in those positions that they've been trained for? Not every woman needs training. All of us here have an education. Yes. Some of us at least. We have college education, we have PhD degrees, we've excelled in schools and gotten summa cum laude or whatever, right? So do we really need training, or do we just need to be put in those positions? I think understanding the value that women have, just understand the role of a woman in the society is huge. I think we're missing it there. A lot of people are missing what is the role of a woman, because we haven't been there yet. We don't need to be trained. We don't need to be mentored. How about trusting us that we can do the work, that we can do the job without those whatever you want to give us? Because let's face it, let's move out of that. Because if you don't include us by end of 2023, guess what? We are so smart, first of all. We are smart, talented, educated, and we can create anything, any technologies that would benefit the future. So if you don't include us by 2023, trust me, you will see that women are going to start their own thing. They're going to start their own inclusion for good, for the sake of equality, for the sake of equity, to make sure that women are included. Because we cannot be playing this game. How much are men getting as trained as women, as much as women? No. When men got all these positions, did they get trained as much as us? No. So why us? Why are you training women like this? In order for women to move to those positions, let's move them the way they are. See us for who we are. We are educated, smart, talented, and we can do anything.
Anyone else like to chime in before we move to the next question?
I would like just to mention something real quick. I know the question was not for me. I completely agree with Lumbie. I also would like to acknowledge all the men that we have in the audience, because it is impossible to empower women without help from our male colleagues. The very first time when I started discussing a situation in Iran with Avisha, I said that there one thing in particular comforts me so much. Seeing young men on the streets with those women, and seeing those young men protecting women as they were attacked by the police. In the vast majority of the cases, they were arrested first and they were beaten up first. Hopefully, we're not going to always have those extreme examples where men needs to show how much they're supporting us. In many countries, it's a little bit of an easier path, but it is very important to mention that. And we can definitely also go to the next question, Brandy, because I'm seeing a lot of questions coming through.
Perfect. Yes, we are getting tons of questions specifically geared towards what can we do? For those of us, who are maybe sitting comfortably on our couch or our easy chair, what can we do? Do you ladies, have any organization specifically? Yes, Dr. Avisha.
So one thing that I would like to mention is that right now, those Iranians that are outside Iran have really come together in support of people in Iran. So there was so many protests in many countries all around the world. There were more than 100,000 people who took to streets in Canada, in Toronto, in support of the revolution in Iran. Same thing in the Europe. And right now, the opposition group, those who were kind of, known faces of opposition against this regime, have created an allyship together. They just came together and formed one group, and they are trying to talk with parliaments, to talk with authorities in mostly in democratic European countries, just to make sure that those countries they just limit more the access of the regime to the political scene in the global at the global level. And so, if you may heard, like in December, all the activities of mostly Iranians who were outside Iran had resulted in that Iran was removed from UN Commission on the Status of Women, and that was a great call by the UN, because we were saying that a regime who kills women, who throw acids, liquid acid to their face, the regime that blinds women, the regime that do a terror, chemical and biological terror to young girls, they don't deserve a seat in that Status of Women Commission in the UN, and the UN accepted that. So if you see a petition that comes up in your social media network that is against this regime, this Islamic Republic of Iran, because lots of our lawyers, lots of our the parliament representatives who are Iranian and have the other nationalities are trying to really put a pressure on the regime so that they can cut their access to the global politicians. Iran has nuclear power too, like Russia. So lots of countries have been very conservative in addressing the human rights issues in Iran, but it's time. And the more that this regime continues to exist, the more damage will be done to everybody in the world. So please do your support. If there is a petition on your social media, if there is a call, if you are that kind that if there is a protest in your country or in your city, if you join Iranians, I know that Iranians and Ukrainians have done a lot of protests together, especially in London, because we have the same enemy. Russia is also enemy of Iran. So I think this unity will give all of us more power.
Thank you, Dr. Avisha. Yes, our voices are always more powerful together. So thank you. We've got a lot of folks that are asking specifically about, organizations that maybe you guys would recommend financially supporting. We had a specific question for Tatiana regarding maybe women and children in the Ukraine, any specific organizations supporting those. And then we've also had a few directed specifically at Lumbie. People want to help get access to clean water to those women and children. So anything you ladies would like to add?
Hey everybody, I'm Violet. I would like to share my personal experience with the Iranians. I have a house in the island of Lesbos. It's in the northern Aegean. It's actually very close swimming distance to Turkey. So those Greek islands very close to the coast of Turkey, they were used. They were shipping a lot of these immigrants. I'm not quite sure of the process. I think they walked from all the way Iran, Syria, all the way to Turkey, and in really dangerous situations. And then they put them in plastic boats. They ship them to Greece in really bad weather conditions. I don't know if you've seen some, like I'm really actually, because I volunteer in one of those NGOs about 3 years ago. I'm actually shaking, like, and I want to cry, because it's very different when you have very smart, educated women presenting you the issue, but when you live it, like you experience it, it's a very different situation. You see mothers with young kids, babies, that they travel by themselves, shipped in really dangerous conditions from Turkey to Greece. In the island of Lesbos, and you can Google this information, they are creating this very big unit that they are hosting about, I think, 20,000 immigrant people that they escaped all, the war that is happening there. And of course, there was an area called Moria. I don't know if you follow the story. There used to be this migrant camp in Moria, which is on the island of Lesbos, and they kept about 20 to 30,000 migrants in a small camp of 5,000 people. So you understand the situations were very bad. I think that the best ways, maybe somebody can volunteer through an NGO and of course donate financial money. And the best way is to just Google the topic, NGOs helping migrants from any of these countries, and just donate money and donate your time, I think.
Thank you, Veliota. And it's actually what we're going to do with the help of Aubrey and Misty. We're going to post some links, some from our panelists and some links pertaining to different NGOs. The crisis, the migrant crisis of refugees coming from many areas, such as Syria in particular, is still a huge crisis. One of the things, I think we all remember the pictures of a young boy that washed ashore of either Greek or Turkey island.
Yeah, that was Greece, yes.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
and it was absolutely devastating. So that situation is still happening, and the earthquake that just happened in Turkey and Syria hasn't made it easier. Education is the key across the world. Education is not the key that is isolated to a particular region. And also what ends up happening is it is hard to get educated if one's country is consistently in the state of crisis. And when you're consistently fighting to stay alive, in those type of circumstances, schools are closed, and a lot of times some of the refugees are able to gain access to the education in the camps, but in many camps that is not the case. I think that looking at all the questions and looking at all the things that we're hearing pertaining to what our panelists were saying, this will probably be something that we can have several different conversations on and maybe focus on each one of these regions separately. I would like to thank our panelists for sharing just a glimpse, just scratching the surface of their stories. And I also would like to thank those of you who attended and those of you who sent us questions, and we're going to start following up with some of the links. I would like to thank Camilita, Lumbie, Elizabeth, Avisha, Tatiana, and of course, one and only Brandy for moderation. Please continue watching the CWL events for the International Women's Day Tomorrow is our first event. Camilita is offering us all these beautiful, beautiful flowers. We all need to come to London to get our flower, and no one needs to force me to do that. I'll be happy to do that. And also, I would like to ask my panelists to stay with me after the session is over, because I would like to take a group picture. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. Thank you for engagement and beautiful, 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 beautiful questions. And we're going to continue our dialogue. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you so much.